Welcome to this panel on diversity in extreme analog environments. Terry Trevino will be moderating this panel. He is a aerospace research scientist with ties to University of North Dakota and American Military University. He's been on several analogs in extreme environments. I know for a fact he's a loving and caring father, and he's teaching orbital mechanics soon. He's teaching it all the time. This is diversity in extreme analog environments. Here you go.
Thank you. This is a big turnout. Thanks so much. Of course, we do have a few rock stars here. Thanks everyone for doing that. So I'm here for a couple of reasons. First of all, not everybody knows this, but I witnessed the first human walking on the moon. I was alive and I was watching the telly. I was almost 5 years old, so I remember it vividly. And most of us who were alive at that time do. And I can see there's a lot of people who were alive and watching that in here. Kidding. The reason I'm here, a couple of reasons I'm here. A lot of what I'm doing today is because of Cyan. I wouldn't be here had I not witnessed I4, had I not seen what an analog environment can do for me. So credit to Cyan for my trajectory changing like it did. We really are chasing the final frontier. I was listening to Emma Loden. I don't know if anybody knows her. She's a Exoplanet Emma. If you follow her on Instagram, she's amazing. And we were talking about inspiration and what is it that, and why are we here? Why are we on this planet? And what has space done for us? And we were thinking through all of these things. My thesis was on exoplanets. And I was like, I don't understand. Well, that means there's other planets. And how many more can there be? There's literally billions of other planets that we can go out and find and in one day explore, hopefully. Maybe not in our lifetime, or certainly not in mine. But I'm here today for these folks. So I'm only going to, everybody knows everyone here. I'm assuming everybody knows Cy. We all know Cy. Shauna, yeah, everybody knows Shauna. Dr. Mason, we call him, hang on, it's Dr. Doc, there's a word. Yeah, Doc, I like that. I'll stick with that. And then there's another Doc, and then there's a pre-Doc over here on the far right. She's almost Doc. And me too, I'm almost Doc, so one day. All right, go to the next slide. So I wanted to show you, if anybody, I know you all have seen this, can you just hit play on that? And if it works, I don't know that it will. If you didn't use PowerPoint, it may not. Okay, I'm not going to curse because this is a public forum. I witnessed that. I saw the launch. I stayed up that night. I was living in Texas at the time, and we stayed up, and I think they started the moonwalk at about 12:15 p.m. around there, or a.m., excuse me. So I stayed up and watched that for 2 hours. I was 5. My parents let me do that. My dad's openly weeping. Walter Cronkite openly weeping. Like, why is everybody crying? Anyway, so here we are today, and I had a couple of misses along the way, a couple of, what do they call those, pivots, where Sarah had a few pivots along the way. And so thanks to everyone for being here. It's really important that we hear these stories. We can just go to the other set of slides now, I think. Yeah, because I love that one. Anyway, sorry. I spent all this time working on slides. I went and got these fancy tables. I got these fancy cloths. And anyway, none of it's getting used. No, it's okay, Doc. Olivia, who has the microphone? All right, here we go.
Oh, no, I've got one here.
Good. Olivia and I were in the Arctic. So that was a heck of an experience. I don't know if anybody's heard the full story in here, but it was quite the experience. But when I met Olivia, it was a really interesting transition to you starting on the team. Olivia got introduced to the team, and I believe, I could be wrong, but you got assigned that day, the chief science officer.
Yeah, I got selected, went to maybe one meeting, and then they assigned me as chief science officer and said I had a week to develop the science objective plan for the mission.
So I know you really well. We spent a lot of time together. Can you kind of share a quick Just a snippet or
Yeah,
two
an
from
introduction
you,
to me. So
please.
for those who I haven't met yet, I'm Olivia. As Terry mentioned, I was the science officer from FMARS 15 last summer. I'm also in my final year of a PhD in a very interdisciplinary science. So I went from physics and engineering, and then I've transitioned into biology. So I'm studying the effects of radiation on the brain, both of space radiation and also radiotherapy, trying to find ways to mitigate the impact of radiation on healthy tissue in cancer patients. So ever since FMARS, I've caught the analog astronaut bug. So I'm trying to get involved as much as possible. I'm also working with CHASM in Europe with Eleanor Poley, for those who know her. And I'm now part of the Chill Ice team for this summer as well. And I'm also working with the space medicine team of the European Space Agency, where we're doing a systematic review looking at the effects of radiation on the brain, as well as if there are sex differences in susceptibility to ionizing radiation. So trying to get involved as much as possible.
That's pretty boring. Okay. Yeah, next. No. I kind of wanted to let everyone just introduce themselves. So Michaela, you're up. And then I have a few questions for all of you. Watch out. I apologize. Michaela, I met you through email a few years ago, and here we are today, finally. I've climbed a lot of mountains, big mountains, and I can tell you, this next mountain is the scariest place I've ever been in my life. And I've been in some really scary situations. So be safe, please. All right.
We'll try my best.
Thank you. Yeah. Careful every step, which is why it's so absolutely nerve-wracking when you're coming across Windy Corner, aptly named Windy Corner. So anybody knows Denali, Athabascan word, not. So you've heard it called, what's the American name for?
Mount McKinley.
Mount McKinley. So we've always called it Denali in the climbing community. And you go across Windy Corner at about 11,500 feet, and you drop to the ground because the winds drop. They come from like a pleasant little 20 miles per hour to a pleasant little 90 mile an hour. And you're wondering, crawling on your hands and knees if you're going to survive. But it's not going to be that bad for you. Anyway, and actually, it was fine. Anyway. So yeah, let's go ahead. Yesterday's talk was brilliant, and so if anybody was here yesterday, that was fantastic to get to know you like that intimately.
Thank you.
Like that. So thank you. But if you want to, maybe anybody that missed it, and just maybe a quick.
Sure. Okay. I guess my name is Michaela Musilova. I'm an astrobiologist. I've been pursuing a passion of trying to understand the limits of life on Earth since I was a little girl, essentially. And then also learning from that to see what our chances are to find alien life, especially on Mars. That's been kind of my favorite planet to work with. And I've pursued also a dream of becoming an astronaut since I was 8 years old. It's been quite a mission and talked about it a lot yesterday. So the short version is still working on it because my nationality, I'm from Slovakia, hasn't made it easy for me to get my foot in the door in the space sector in the first place. But I've been trying to kind of pave my path along the way. I created my path to astrobiology because when I started off, it didn't really even exist as a science or wasn't acknowledged as one. And now I'm opening doors to fellow country people in Slovakia to be able to get into the space sector. And I tell myself, if I don't make it to space, I hope that at least through my work, I can allow other people from my country to get there. So that's kind of where I'm at. Oh yeah, I was also the director of High Seas for a few years. I forgot about that part. Commander of over 30 simulated missions to the moon and Mars. And then I decided to pursue a dream of mine, which is to climb the 7 summits, the tallest mountain on each continent. So that's what Terry was talking about. Next week, I'm about to climb Denali, the tallest mountain in North America. And it's part of a research and educational project that I'm leading at the moment.
Also boring. Okay. So I'm going to save those comments. My God, it's amazing. Yeah, you too. Okay, spectacular. Doc, Mason. So Mason's coming to the Arctic here in a few weeks, so get ready. It's definitely an unusual place. I think there was a few, Olivia has a few photos that she shared in the slides here. Doc is, yeah, there you go. High seas right there. Great images. Anyway, who's that little person?
I have no idea. But it was at the Desert Museum for the eclipse last year, and this little kid was like terrified, so ran over in a suit and then took my helmet off and
That's
put it
brilliant.
on. It's probably like the most air he's had blown in his face.
He looks
But,
okay.
yeah.
Isaac's over here too. Here's the future astronaut. So there is one
Cool.
astronaut in the room, right? Unless there's any other that snuck in. I don't know. But there's one. And then there's another one right there, the future astronaut. Probably before me, Isaac. I hope. Anyway, yeah, Doc. So Arctic's coming up, but give us the rundown. Just who you
Cool.
are, what you are. What's
Yeah.
the story?
So I grew up loving space and all that. Tom Stafford wasn't far from me, so I was hanging out with him quite a bit, which was that inspiration. But then being a Challenger generation baby, space was for like 3 PhDs or military pilots. So I never thought it was an opportunity. So I actually did my undergrad in international relations, worked for the UN for a little bit, was stationed in Cyprus. And then from there helped start FC Barcelona Innovation Hub, worked for Real Madrid. So that's what the football photos were, and lifted the Champions League trophy a couple times, which is fun. And then side tangent, I also was captain of the Scottish national lacrosse team. Still play lacrosse semi-professional when I'm not doing space. And then, yeah, I got an opportunity during my PhD to do human factors engineering and connected with like Cameron Smith, and we built a suit. We're actually in the process of building a new suit that's a next generation with multiple bladders and high pressure and all that kind of stuff. But now I just basically am an academic mercenary. I go around. I've helped out at high seas doing repair stuff. I'm happy to come up to the Arctic to do repair stuff. Worked here at SAM with the crew here, which was a lot of fun, and then doing some things with some analog programs over in Europe. Basically, just come in, fix things, command missions, have fun, and do it with people you love. A good Mike Mongo, pow pow pow. Yeah, so it's just kind of a journey. Kind of a journeyman, and just happy to be a part of this. And thanks again for inviting me up here.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Okay. You know, it's, I don't know, everybody probably knows this. When you start looking at each other, right, and we were chatting about this at the opening, right? How our tribes, right? This is our tribe. This is amazing. This is where we want to be in our lives in here. I think in this room, maybe somebody wants to be different, but that's okay. That's the beauty of being different. The next person nobody knows. We've just I ran into her outside and I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" So Shauna, yeah, there you go. Shauna's brilliant, and I'm going to let you just kind of give me the lowdown. What's the story?
All right. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Okay, the front row is doing okay. How are the people at the back? Yeah. Right. Well, thanks for joining us on this Saturday morning. After hearing these folks and knowing that I am science opening act, essentially, I feel like I need to do more with my life. But for those of you who don't know me, I am a Canadian physician. My passion is space medicine and space in extreme environments. And I wear multiple hats, and I aspire to further space medicine and help build a legacy towards building a permanent future for humans in space, and also bringing the best of what we do in human and space medicine innovation to our most in need environments on Earth. So that sounds aspirational. So let me qualify that a little bit more. So on a day-to-day, my life is like a box of medical chocolates, of space medical chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. I'm an emergency physician in all over rural Alberta. That's like Canadian Texas, for those of you who don't know. I'm the VP of Immersive Medicine with Luxonic Technologies. So this is a Canadian company that leverages immersive medicine, immersive technologies, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, to deliver healthcare to astronauts in space and to our most in need terrestrial locations. I am the director of the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences Space Medicine Group. So that's all. Anytime you see me in a spacesuit, EVA, IVA spacesuit, that is through AAS. There's more. I'm sure there's more, but we'll start there. And I've been lucky enough to be on several analog missions with incredible crewmates who have been lifelong friends, lifelong family. Some of them are in the audience today. I will spare them the embarrassment of saying they know me. But I've been lucky enough to do 2 underwater aquanaut missions as the crew medical officer. And I've been to MDRS twice, once as the crew medical officer and once as commander. And, you know, just the lessons learned as being a crewmate, and also through the mistakes I make, have just been so instrumental. So that is me. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks so much. Okay. So the good news is we do have an astronaut in the room, and that's a cool badge. I want one of those badges. Jesse, you have one too, that says your name on it and it's got the wings. I want one of those. So I'm going to find one. But there's some common theme here, and Sai's kind of brought us all together over the years. And it's a color, and it's blue. I don't know if you guys noticed that in almost all of these images. And I noticed it last night. And being a colorblind, red deutero colorblind, I don't see red and green very well, but man, I see blue. And there was a story, and Sai probably will talk about it in a bit, but the Earth shine. That's
Earthlight.
Earthlight. So I'll let you go from here, but yeah, Earthlight. That's amazing.
Well, hi everyone. It's welcome. Welcome. Hi. It's really great to see everyone here. The Analog Astronaut Conference. Actually, I designed this logo with Tim. A lot of you have worked with Tim in the past. Boy, that would have been maybe 2018 that we worked on that logo, and was really trying to get the Analog Astronaut Conference off the ground. And it's with Jazz's help. Jazz isn't in the room. Are you in the room, Jazz? There you are. I got to talk with Jazz while she was building a habitat in her backyard during COVID. And I was doing a little show called Space Snacks on Instagram. And I was like, wait, what? You're the perfect person to partner with for the Analog Astronaut Conference. And it's really because of Jazz that we're all here today. And the conference is what it is, along with the amazing volunteers. So thank you to all of you that have done such a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Like a lot of you, I've been chasing space my entire life. I was born on Guam. Most of you know my story, and how it's gone. You zig and zag through your life, became a geoscience professor. And then I was exploring. My main thing is trying to be an explorer, go out there and see the world around us. That's why I love geology, because it rocks. But that love of aviation and aerospace was always with me. I almost was a NASA astronaut. Great thing to be able to celebrate when you get down to that yes/no phone call. Even if it's a no, it's such an amazing experience in your life. And then I was able to come out of that. I was 39 years old and thinking, wow, am I going to get another shot to go to space? But then I thought, wow, I can become an analog astronaut living in Moon and Mars simulations, and did the first high seas mission with my commander, Angelo. Angelo, stand up. And so we lived for 4 months in the high seas habitat. And, Angelo was one of the people who really started. Angelo and Kate, who was also in the habitat with us. If you haven't read her book, it's fantastic. Once Upon a Time, I lived in a Mars simulation. Is that correct? Once upon a time, I lived on Mars. But being around two artists in the habitat really kind of like began to get me to think about me as a scientist differently. And so I lived in the high seas habitat, Lunaris, MDRS, and then high seas again. And then COVID changed everything for me, like it did for a lot of us. How many of you baked sourdough? Anyone? Sourdough? Or picked up a musical instrument? And that's when it was really during COVID that I leaned into the creative side of me as an artist. And I started doing collage art. Wouldn't have called myself an artist. Started sharing it on social media, and people were like, this is really cool, this is great. So that really gave me some confidence to try different mediums. And unbeknownst to me, 9 months later, it won me a seat to space when I wrote the poem Space to Inspire. And that, of course, led to inspiration for the first all-civilian mission to orbit. But I got to tell you, one of the things about going in and doing the training for Inspiration 4 and having the confidence to know that I could do that and take on the role of
mission pilot, the two things that gave me the confidence to be able to go in and do that in 6 months, because I'm not a systems engineer but getting my pilot's license changed me fundamentally. Anybody a pilot here and gone through pilot training? Amazing when you solo an airplane for the first time in your life. When you're like, I'm going to kill myself. No, I'm not. I'm going to kill myself. No, I'm not. No, it's all good. Uh, and then living in analogs and the things that you learn about yourself as a result of spending time, significant time with, people who are virtually strangers at the beginning, and you grow into becoming family, or family, at the end. But the things about learning how to communicate and the things you learn about yourself made me realize that, yeah, I can be able to live in a small habitat or a small capsule for 3 days. So if you don't know Inspiration 4, we lived in the Dragon capsule for 3 days as we orbited the Earth. And so as my commander of that mission, Jared Isaacman would say, you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And analogs really teach you how to do that, and do it in a way that it helps you not only be successful, but be a good crew member who can overcome things like conflict and learn how to mitigate those things. And so I'm just thrilled to be here. And, I look in this room and I all see future flyers for going to space, to the moon, Mars, and beyond. And that's exciting.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. I did say rock stars at the beginning, but maybe it's space stars. I think I might have said that wrong. Yeah, shooting stars. Oh, I like that. You really are an artist. I did have a bunch of questions. So, Olivia, it was interesting meeting you and then being dropped on a desert island in the Arctic, and it was just you and 4 really strange guys, and I was always cognizant of that, and it. So Bailey Burns, anybody know Bailey? Yeah, Bailey says you don't treat me like a woman, and you said that, and treat me like a person, and I went, yeah, it's life lesson, right? Learned right then. So thank you. Bailey had repeated it to me many times. You have to say things a lot to me for me to get through. So, but how was that first week with us, and how was the experience? And I never asked you this, by the way.
No, no, yeah, it was a difficult decision. I was very on the fence when we were planning it, because I'd been in male-dominated spaces before, but it was my first analog mission, and also we were on the largest uninhabited island in the world. It would have taken, hours for rescue to come if we needed it. So I was hesitant, but I was very fortunate with the crew that we had, and Andrew, our commander, even said to me after the mission that he's worked with men and women in the field, and he always makes it a point to treat everyone the same. Don't give certain roles to the men and other roles to the women. And I did sense that he was keeping that in mind. He was letting me get involved in the engineering that I didn't know much about. He was letting us all observe each other, work with each other. We had our roles, but we communicated, and we made sure that everyone was capable of doing every important step. And so luckily, I didn't find myself feeling outcast or the odd one out at all. But I recognize that that's a fortunate thing to happen, and it doesn't always happen. So I'm a big advocate for making groups, especially in these isolated environments, as diverse as possible, and so that no one feels like they stick out, like they're different from the rest.
Well, it was interesting. You had me, a Mexican American. You had the 2 Boeing engineers, which, oh my God, I feel terrible for Boeing right now. Oh, please, Boeing, please fly. And I hope that flies well. Isn't that supposed to go up pretty soon? Yeah. Yeah, I'm worried about that. So I was alive. I've been alive a long time, but there was a dead period in my life. I snapped out of it a couple of times. Challenger, was eye-opening. Colombia was worse. And so, when we were in the Arctic, I was really worried every day. And there was every moment I was concerned that, we would have a serious injury. And unfortunately, we had one. And I have to say, one of the most impressive parts of I know you're very old. And because of your age and wisdom, I think I was more impressed with how you reacted to that sudden moment. Can we pull up the other slides so that has some of the Arctic photos in it of Olivia's? Thank you. Thanks so much. If anybody's been there, I think is there an Arctic person in here? I thought there might be. You've been there, Rochelle. Whoa, that's so beautiful there. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. And now those fjords scare the hell out of me. One little landslide and you're all going, no. Anyway, yeah, so as isolated as we were, right? One injury away from hopefully getting rescued within a few hours. And that constant kind of niggling little fear was always with me. Did you feel that at all when you were there? Did you always think about that?
Sometimes, I guess we were so busy. In the lead up to it, we had meetings with other people who had been to FMARS, and they were reiterating the fact that, oh, you're going to feel so isolated and alone and scared. But I think we did a good thing in that we had so much we had to do. We were working constantly that we didn't really have time to think about that too much. So luckily, I didn't have that feeling, but there were definitely some close calls and something to be prepared for.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. Okay. Levity is a good thing. Well, I'm not going to talk about biomass yet, but that is going to be a conversation here in a few minutes. Michaela, so Aconcagua, let's talk about that. The penitentes. So there were 2 photos of the penitentes. So anybody saw those photos yesterday with Michaela in kind of they're like stalactites when they come out of the ground. Is that right? Mites out of the ceiling, tights out of the ground.
I think it's the other way.
Other way around. Anyway, I always got that wrong as a kid. Sorry.
I'm not sure. Is it one of the pictures I sent you? It was in my presentation yesterday.
I thought I saw one. You were standing next to it and looking
yeah.
at it. Maybe not.
So that's Svalbard on the top.
Oh, there
right.
it is.
So also been to Svalbard, but not on a boat. We were living on the mountain, and you might be able to see I have a rifle type thing across me because of polar bears.
I do see that.
So the way you do research there is, one person's on alert with the gun and the other person is collecting samples and you take turns sort of thing. And bottom left is Greenland. That we also had a risk of polar bears, approximately 30%, but my British team evaluated that that's not risky enough for us to have any weapons on us. So we were there completely, bear spray-less, weaponless. And it was one of those things at night I would just tell myself, I would look around the campground and everything one last time before I entered my tent. And at this point, I was like, I just can't think about it anymore. Otherwise, I'm not going to sleep because if the polar bear comes during the night, it's going to be too late anyway, because I might as well get some sleep. So it was different types of extremes there. But I think in terms of pictures from my expeditions, I think because I put them in my slides yesterday, I didn't put them here because the Kilimanjaro one.
You gave me 8 or 10, and I might have missed the. But wow.
And the one on the bottom right is doing mountaineering and ice climbing training. So I'm inside a crevasse training how to get out if I were to fall in something like that. Yeah. And then some rock climbing on the top right.
So this is the dynamic I wanted to bring up because all of us and many of us here in the room have experienced this. Fear can be paralyzing. And what is it that, and I'll ask all of this of you, all of you, for me, I want to know first, what is it that allows you to cancel the fear out? So there's got to be a balance, right? And then something happens inside and you go, I'll get past it. Is it something that you can think of, a word? Now you guys are going to get to cheat a little because you have time to think about it.
I think for me, I always try to be as rational as I can be because panicking is the worst thing you can do in these situations. So deep breaths, trying to calm myself down and try and think as rationally as I can. So for example, with the polar bear thing, there's no point worrying every single day all the time that I'm going to be eaten by a polar bear. It's not going to help me. And hopefully I won't meet one, which I didn't in Greenland, but I did meet a few in Svalbard. So that's another story. And so it's just trying to think clearly and practically, even when I'm scared. And so, for example, there were moments like when we were climbing some of these mountains where there was literally nothing below me, and the full weight was on the person above me that was trying to pull me up because I just couldn't wedge my foot in something. Problem being a short person, sometimes you just can't reach places. And so he was like pulling me up. And again, I was starting to be scared that he just won't have the strength, or he will slip and he'll fall over or something. But again, I told myself there's no point worrying about this now. I have to trust that he can do it. Panicking isn't going to help either of us. It's not going to help lift me out of this place I was in. And I just had to trust the system and do my best at the moment. So it's just trying to calm that panicky feeling of fear and desperation and just try and think as sensibly as I can. Trust myself, trust the other people, know that I've done the training, I've done my best, and now it's really up to the higher forces, nature, weather, to see, if we all make it out alive, essentially.
So God. Yeah.
Some, yeah.
Sorry, astrophysicist me is just like, God? Okay. Well, anyway, moving on. So, yeah, I want to come back to you because I have some other things that I wanted to visit with. You have been some really scary places, Shauna. I can think of, now you have too, by the way, Belize in the caves. That scares the hell out of me. But did you feel fear? Did it ever become paralyzing for you for any moment? And did you have to overcome it? And what was the one thing that you thought of?
This is a bit more of a complex question than that. And when the whole Titan submersible tragedy happened, that led to a lot of self-reflection for all of us in the exploration community, because Hamish Harding was a friend, and we'd gone hiking in the Azores at the Global Exploration Summit the year prior, and it was sort of like, this is one of us. So it was very sobering, and that led me to some reflection. And I wrote this essay called Comfortably Uncomfortable, because that's essentially what we do. If you're at this conference, if you are a space nerd who aspires to shoot for the stars, you want to push the boundaries, but it's also about recognizing that risk. And so in the experiences I've had, there's been multiple ways that we've come attacked this problem together, essentially. So I see Morgan from my MDRS mission. He's here, and Marufa was on that mission as well. And I was privileged enough to be the commander of that mission. And the very first thing that we did before we went into simulation is we developed a shared mental model of success. And we talked about our goals as a crew. And then we kind of made sure that we were all on the same page. And for all of us, the number one objective was safety. It was safety, then science, then outreach, then fun. And that was the order of things. And there was no doubt about that. And then, I alluded in my intro to, I've made some mistakes on analogs for sure. And I think being a commander is a lot like, it's like being in a position of public service or a parent or a teacher. If you make a mistake, it's there for all to see, and you have to own it, because otherwise people aren't going to trust you. And one thing that I noticed is in my first MDRS mission, we were very lean. We were a crew of 5. We were very nimble. So myself and my EVA partner, we were always paired together, and we would just be nimble and fast and find the highest, steepest, like the most like ambitious slope to climb, because for us we're Canadians, we're just part mountain goat. And so then I noticed when I was leading one EVA, I was doing that same thing. And then I looked back and I said, well, no, that's not what we're doing here. We're not going as fast as we can. We're going together. And then I had to kind of mentally reel myself in and say, this is about everyone's comfort level. It's not about what I want to do. So that was really instructive. And then coming back to this idea of being comfortably uncomfortable, on our Aquanaut mission, that was the first time I went on a night dive. And the first time you're ever out in the ocean in the middle of the night, you do this thought experiment. You know where you are. You know where you are in relation to where you started. You turn off your light and you feel like you're floating in deep space. And your mind is like, what is happening? Am I lost out of my space capsule? Am I lost forever? And then you just, as Michaela said, you reel it back in. You kind of find your bearings, you ground yourself, and then you say, what's the next thing I need to do? So you kind of go through these excursions where it's like, where's the limit? I talk a lot about pushing the limits in day-to-day life. When you talk about pushing the limits, you find where the boundary is for two reasons, right? And here's the very nerdy analogy. It's like materials stress testing. You're pushing the limit to know where the limit is so you don't go any further because that's the breaking point. Or your character is like that material. You reinforce it so you can go further and higher and faster the next time.
So that reach, right? That reach or that stretch, right? That's Emma was talking about it in one of her TEDx talks. This next level of Isaac, the next kids, they need to know that we're going to support them, and it takes money to get there. So all of us really are a part of this. So space policy is a really important part of what I've been working on lately. And so I'm fascinated to hear in a few minutes about that. So, but I want to keep transitioning to the rest of you. Sorry, real quick, Mason. You don't have to. Just tell me what you think. You've had the shiitake mushroom scared out of you, I'm sure, at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a quick story? Because you got a little Scottish in you, right? So
Yeah. So
maybe-
I'm one of those, like, I'm Scottish American. So if I wake up with coffee, I'm an American accent. And by the time you get me the pints at the end of the day, I
Yeah.
have a Scottish accent.
There you are. I appreciate that.
Depends on where on the spectrum of the day it is.
Yeah.
I think, I've talked about this. So I've had over 100 hours under pressure and pressurized suits and experimental stuff. And I've had oxygen cut before. I've knocked myself out completely before, but it would it overinflated, kind of like this first spacewalk. So like you're overinflated, you can't move and you're out, which is kind of fun. I've also been like at the last high seas mission, it was like my 6th EVA under pressure and like sleep deprivation and all that kind of stuff. And I just slipped and fell for the first time in a suit and just face planted. And again, high inflation, was completely like a turtle, but on my stomach instead of my back type of thing. But you panic, but you work through those. So one thing, and I think James S.A. Corey kind of addressed this in one of his books in the Expanse series, is when you put on a spacesuit, you get out there, you're doing something that's confined and dangerous a little bit, you either have panic or euphoria. And it's balancing those two moments of being in awe, but also being in kind of panic. And that's when you kind of find that balance of when you understand that you can work your way through it. And if not, you'll die. Or you might not, but you find ways to get through it. And the more times that you practice, the more times you do. I mean, repetition is all that space really is doing over and over and over until you don't have to think about it. But just balancing and understanding that everyone has somewhere on that spectrum, panic or euphoria, when they're doing something brand new. I mean, I'm scared of flying, but I love the idea of going up in a rocket. So you work through some of those things.
Yeah,
so.
strap me on a rocket.
Yeah, exactly. It goes like that.
I would hold out on the outside as long as I could, and then see you later. There goes Terry.
Dr. Strangelove style.
Cool. Okay. So not many people have actually strapped themselves to a bomb in the room, have they? Anybody? Oh, Cyan. Yeah. So I have to say I was I4, again, I'm not cursing, but I was definitely scared. I was nervous. Yeah. And I was visibly nervous. People were like, what's wrong with you? My hands were shaking. I'm like, Gah. Anyway, so how did those first few moments feel when and then you get in, what's the story? Talk about a fear moment or no?
No, absolutely not. I don't know if you saw the video, but I'm like, let's go, let's suck her up. No, I think I'm driven more from FOMO, fear of missing out. And so I was more terrified that I wasn't going to make it to liftoff because it was COVID. You couldn't get hurt. You couldn't get sick. SpaceX made it very clear. You may have won a seat to space, but if you don't qualify as the mission pilot, you will not fly. And so it was a big heavy lift, that 6 months of training and everything. And so by the time they strapped me in, I'm like, light this sucker up. I'm ready to go. And so people always ask, was I afraid? And I was like, no, I was ready to go because I was well prepared. And I also kind of have, when you talk about that, why go? I think FOMO definitely drives that. Like, I don't want to miss out. And I have this kind of explorer's attitude of there are worse ways to die, and doing something I love is not one of them for me. And so I think that that's where the fear, I can overcome the fear because I know the reward of being part of something, particularly something historic, far outweighs any fear that could ever pop into my mind.
And talk about making history. First female pilot, African American, like you just checked all the boxes all at once.
Yeah, I was really fortunate because it's one of those interesting things to have a childhood dream of wanting to be a pilot. That was the first thing. I loved military aviation. I wanted to fly the F-16 and got glasses when I was a teenager. And back then you couldn't be a military aviator, but women weren't fighter pilot back then either. And I didn't know that. Thankfully, my parents kept me in the dark in that area. But to get to a point where not only do you get that golden ticket when, Jared said, you won, you won the prosperity seat. We picked you, and you're just in this moment of like, whoa, wait, whoa, I'm going to space. And then the next thing he said to me was, and I want you to be my mission pilot. And, you kind of like, and your brain's going, does he know I've only flown a Cessna 172? I'm like, and again, you don't want to miss out. And you're like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Yeah, all right, we can do this, and you're like not having any clue that that was coming down the corridor, that was going to be an option, right? And then suddenly you're given this amazing gift. And you realize that two of your childhood dreams, going to space and becoming a pilot of, being the pilot of a spaceship, were going to come true. But then again, you go into that the fear mode is the fear of not being successful, not, of it being taken away from you, not fear of dying.
I was worried that the entire experience would be diminished and discounted because it was commercial or private. And I don't feel like that's happened. I don't know if anybody else is feeling that in the room, but I felt like it brought us to a next level. Talk about a pivot, right? And it was just the right time for a pivot. Our world is definitely in a funky spot right now.
And I just want to say, this summer, Polaris Dawn,
coming.
that is going to be amazing.
So they're flying at 700 kilometer. I think they're
no 1,600.
So
it's really elliptical.
They're going to be so way far out there.
I know it's going to be amazing.
And EVA.
And an EVA.
Oh my God! Anybody see those suits? They're spectacular. I like that they're not as kind of cumbersome looking as some of the other suits, but I also do worry about that. But anyway, it's aerospace science in me. Don, how are we doing on time? Oh God, awesome. Anybody need to stand up? They want to dance? We can do that. We could do an intermission, bathroom, coffee, water, walk around.
We might shuffle seats, so just
yeah. And then so
Put the table.
when you come back, I want you to have your own questions, and that's what these folks are here for. And it's going to be wide open. I do have a couple of questions about biomass. So anyway, all right, 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes. Is that enough? Maybe. Okay. So we've got, did we buy an extra few minutes, Pivoter, Sarah? All right, so we have 15 minutes. I wanted to open up to you folks. I wanted just whatever's on your mind, whatever you think you can ask these absolute professional, amazing humans. Yeah, it's Katie bar the door, whatever you got. So I'll charge around with the microphone. I will be super fast. I don't mess around. And yeah, so I know I can already see the anticipation. And I do want to call on So Rochelle, there you are. I don't know if anybody knows Rochelle. There a lot of us do up here, and she's amazing artist. Yada yada yada. All the exactly checking all the boxes as well. Are you nervous about anything coming up in the near future? There's like a rocket that's 4 times the size of a normal rocket or something like that. What's the story there? How's that going? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you need, and they're in the fundraising mode too. So if anybody knows somebody with a lot of big pockets, really big fat pockets, relativity, just look it up. Yeah. Yeah. Tim was here last year, right? Or the year before? Yeah. 2 years ago. Yeah. That was awesome. That was a great talk. I remember that. Very, anyway. No. No, Taryn was huge. I thought it was quite big. Anyway, so questions, Illyris, yes, coming to you.
So as you all have gone through, I loved your conversation about fear and how each of you addressed that. So my question to each of you is what surprised you in your analog experiences about the interpersonal relationships that were part of your success or learning?
I think for me, the longest one I did was high seas, which was 4 months. And it really was a lot about learning about myself and what I like or didn't like. I think you got to go into these things really understanding if you're a morning person, if you're a night person, don't talk to me before coffee. And I just remember I go back to Kate's book. There's a great section where she talks about how halfway through the mission, someone in the hab, the way they walked down the stairs really just grated at her, where she was like, I'm going to kill this person, by the time. And I kept thinking, oh, I wonder if that's me, because I'm like a stomper. And I'm like, oh, she doesn't name people, but the things that really irk you and figuring out how you deal with them or how do you share those things with your crew members so that you can be more successful. And so a lot of things like I like to go in when I know I'm going to do an analog with a crew is that we do things like we'll do strength finders to find out what your strengths are and kind of map those out with each other. I even did that with Inspiration 4. I made Jared, Chris, and Haley do strength finders. And but also talking about, what type of, like, are you a morning person or a night person? Are you novelty driven? Or, are you somebody who likes to have stuff that is repeated and known and just little things like that can really, your tendencies. Gretchen Rubin has the 4 tendencies. So there's a lot of kind of books that you can look at and think about what are your habits? What are the things that you need? What type of space do you have? Because a lot of times the space that you love, like if you're an outdoor person, you might not get that in an analog. If you go to Lunaris or you go to Sam, where you're, the only outside you're going to get is enclosed within a sealed area. And I'm an outdoor person, so for high seas, that was ideal for me because I could go out even though I was in a spacesuit. I went out a lot of times on EVAs, went out night, tried to do some stargazing and things like that. So really analyzing yourself and who you are and the things that make you tick and what you need in order to be happy.
Yeah, that's really great. And there's this concept out there in the mission, in the space flight world, in the expedition world. It's called expeditionary behavior. And this concept got a lot of attention at the beginning of the pandemic when everyone was essentially, willfully or not, thrown into isolation and confinement together. And I was once asked to give a keynote to all of these world-leading wilderness medics on expeditionary behavior. And like, these are the docs who've been up to Everest, the docs who've been to the Titanic. So it's like, what could I possibly have to teach these guys? So then I Googled NOLS, like National Outdoor Leadership School, astronautics, expeditionary behavior, because I'm like, I'll just steal from that. And then, of course, it was my name and an article I'd previously done. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm the expert on this. But when we talk about expeditionary behavior, it's looking for gaps to fill, looking to make your teammates' lives better. And there's a Canadian that I've been on MDRS missions and now 2 underwater missions with, and he just phrased it very simply as what I expect of a teammate is, are they making, or what I ask of a teammate is, are they making my mission better, or are they making it worse? And so it's kind of coming back to this model of being both a leader and a follower. And so when I talk about that model, I view it as a mortar between the bricks model, because when we look at a brick wall, it's so easy to think that the strength of that brick wall comes from the bricks themselves. And that's what we think about leaders being. It's being the person who's at the front of the room yelling out orders. But if you take away that mortar, there's no strength there. The brick wall falls apart. And that's our job as teammates, as leaders, as followers, to look for those gaps and fill them and build those connections. And that's really key. And, to Cyan's point, when my teammates saw that, oh my God, she's not had her coffee, they would make me coffee, because it would just be a less murderous day for all of us. And there's so many stories about that, where we would just make our lives better, and it was so appreciated. And those ties continue beyond the mission, to the point where Morgan and I and 2 other crewmates willfully locked ourselves in an escape room as soon as we got out of sim, because we just enjoyed each other's company that much. Or we're in daily chats together, we're like family, right? Those bonds continue, and they strengthen beyond the mission.
I had one mission where the person that drove me nuts was breathing the way they were breathing, and it was like, can you stop breathing? I'm thinking that, of course, but yeah. So I get you, Cy, on that. You walk too heavy. Come on, should have. Rochelle had a quick question. Mason, do you want to, if we could, because we're short on time, right? What's the story?
Let's keep, we can keep it rolling.
Yeah.
Those are great. I was going to say, the only thing that I would
Yeah.
add is like, it really takes being a servant leader. And I think that's the thing, is like getting up in the morning and am I serving the needs of those who are following me and all that kind of stuff. So that's, exactly what you're saying. So cool.
I love that. Yeah, this expeditionary behavior concept, I definitely want to take a deeper dive into. So I'm curious, Shauna, about your experiences doing analogs underwater, because that's got to be a lot of pressure in so many ways.
Unintended.
So if you could reflect a little bit on that, and then maybe if we went down the line, and if you could each share, like, what was the curiosity spark that like propelled you to be like, I'm going to do this analog because fill in the blank.
Yeah, there was a lot of motivation. We had 5 stellar teammates, and I know that Olivia was talking about being the only female on her mission. I was the only female. It was 5 people, 2 Canadians, 3 Americans, 1 female, 4 males, and that never came to forefront. It was all about, what skill sets do we need? What does the mission need? Because we brought the science, we brought the logistics, we brought the engineering with us. And it was 8 months of preparation, and it was round the clock. It was fixing the ethics revisions that needed to be done. There was no sleep till Brooklyn leading up to the mission, but it was being very well rounded, recognizing that, I think Paul stepped out for a minute, but he was our executive officer, and he's like, his secret nerdy superpower is being a logistician, like 10 orders of magnitude above the rest of us. He can see ripples of what needs to be done. And that was just so helpful. So it was like really realizing there were strengths, and then also being willing to share the burden. It was so key. Like, we were in this together, and we realized that there was a pass the baton model of leadership. When I would be overstretched, what I realized is my fellow Canadian, Doug, he was awesome. He would just say, okay, I just learned to communicate when I was overburdened, say, hey, Doug, can you help me? Can you take this on? And it was just as simple as saying, Doug, please remind me to do that. And he would just do that. And it was amazing, because you learn to share what your distress points are. You learn to have that maturity to cite that where you're not doing well. And then your crew comes to bat for you. And that's really why we had 2 successful, and hopefully more successful, missions together.
Yeah, Mason, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, has anyone here seen Ted Lasso? Yeah, so we actually had diamond dogs. And if someone needed to talk about something, they would just start barking or whatnot. And we would just circle up all the couches. And then, it was kind of like superficial at first, but by the end of it, I'm sure we heard things that partners and family that never heard before, that's still in that circle of trust. So it was just nice having that pressure valve to let off. And that really brought our crew together on my last mission.
So for me, I guess kind of combining these topics, I'll start with when I first got into doing research in extreme environments, like the picture in Greenland that was shown earlier. It was unfortunately not a very, how to put this, welcoming or friendly place. I was also the only female in a team of, I think there were 9 of us, so the rest were guys. In Greenland, stuck for 3 months, and it was hard. And I'm not going to go into details now, but unfortunately, I didn't have the pleasure of having teammates like some of my colleagues here. And if anything, all my what I now recognize as strengths were taken against me. So, for example, empathy is something that I've always had a lot of. And actually, people even told me that empathy is a bad thing and I should cut down on that, and that it's going to cause me trouble later in life and all those things. And so during that particular expedition in Greenland, I was really like they really used it against me and made me feel really bad about everything to do with myself. And empathy was definitely one of those things. And what was really great during analog missions is that I learned to be more myself. And with time, I realized that actually empathy is a strength. And I think that's what has helped me be the commander that I've been. And I hope that people have liked me as a commander because I realize, and kind of like what everyone has been saying, it's so important to try and understand how the other people are feeling, not just to put yourself first, to be a follower and a leader, to be that mortal, the thing that connects people. So I've always wanted to build those bridges between people, help solve conflicts, and empathy was really the #1 thing. And that also then led me to what I mentioned yesterday briefly during my talk, that I always wanted to make our crews feel more like a family rather than just a group of professionals having to work together. Because in a family, you forgive when someone does something wrong. You have so much more understanding for people's quirks and flaws, and instead, you want to make them happy if someone's feeling sad and all those things. So I would say those are the 2 things that I always kind of went back to. I always hope to make us be a family, and communication and empathy were key to that. But that's something that I actually learned thanks to analogs, that those are really good things that at least help me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to reiterate everything that was said by my fellow panelists, that understanding yourself and understanding your other crew members, what makes you tick, what drives you, and also what can kind of trigger you. And in that sense is really important. So like for my Chill Ice mission, we're developing what Eleanor calls these golden rules. So everyone has their own idea of what could irritate them, what they need, if they need their coffee before they talk to anyone, things like that. And it's really important to understand that about yourself and then also communicate that with your fellow crew members. And that can make or break your dynamic as a crew. So we also, one thing that really surprised me going on this mission is I thought it would feel more like work, like that we were all very professional 100% of the time and kind of just in our own zone doing our own thing. But actually, it was so much more fun than I expected. We had a lot of humor amongst our crew. We took opportunities to do that and have fun with it. Like we came up with names for our ATVs and our generators. So we're like, oh, I got to go turn Jenny on, and I got to go get the Valkyrie up and running and things like that. And our commander was also tracking our puns and rating them on quality. And so at the end, he gave a ranking of who gave the best puns on the trip. And it made a huge difference, I think. It really helped us gel as a crew, having that shared sort of sense of humor. And then towards the end, when we had to deal with an emergency situation, and our crew worked incredibly well together. We were like a machine. Everyone knew each other. They knew what to do. They looked at where the gaps were and they immediately went and filled them. And so, it can't be understated how important understanding each other, empathizing with each other can be in these potentially life or death situations.
And I'm going to add real quick to that. That was one of the scariest few moments, right, that we've ever had with on a mission. And I was shocked at how quickly everybody came together. So yeah, Sai, go ahead. Sorry.
I also want to add that you can think of analogs. A lot of times we think of analogs as living in a habitat or becoming an aquanaut. But I've had two that have been really amazing, and that have been on research vessels. And so that really gets you into this mindset of like if traveling to Mars or somewhere distant. So I did a NOAA teacher at sea, and they want me to be on this fishing vessel, and they talk about like being a little bit scared. All I could think about, because I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be deadliest catch. I'm gonna fall over. I'm gonna fall overboard, and they're not gonna find me. But I didn't let that fear stop me from going. And I had this amazing time up in Alaska on this boat, and it was a vessel. It was so amazing that I ended up going on the Joyous Resolution for 2 months down in the deep Antarctic circumpolar current during the winter time. And so you can imagine being on this vessel. And what's cool about that is that you have multiple layers of activity. You have the people who run the vessel, and then you have the people who are the scientists on the vessel and the technicians, and all of us coming together. And if, again, you're in deadly water, if you fall overboard, you're dead. And so just figuring out how to work on that. And I know, Rochelle, I think you're going to Antarctica, right? Yes, I will be in Antarctica at the same time, but on a different vessel. But thinking about when you're there, be like, you're really going on an analog. And you're going to an extreme environment, and you're going with crew members, and you've got all these different tiers, and how everybody interacts and gets along is it will be fun and interesting for you to go through that experience while I'm doing the same with my group, and then we'll get together afterwards and compare notes.
To your point, Cyan, these are everyday practical skills. It's about being human, and it's about treating each other with respect. And in 2022, I was on a medical deployment to Ukraine, and we would go over the border daily, and it would get more and more onerous. By the last day, we were spending 7 hours in a car together simply for the border crossing. And, there were 2 cars, and coming back to this idea of expeditionary behavior, one car wasn't talking to each other at all at the end of that 7 hours because you were stuck in a vehicle for 7 hours. And then our car was just, laughing, joking, because we had developed that camaraderie. So those skills go beyond the mission.
Everyday skills with your family, like John, family traveling together.
Yeah, one final question that it's fitting that it's at the end, because I'm interested in the transition from these in-depth, personalized analog missions to back to real life, right? What, especially for those of you who've done a lot, have you noticed patterns for the changes that you go through kind of emotionally as you transition back to life?
Yeah, imagine splashing down and then having to go back to your regular life after 6 months of flying fighter jets and climbing mountains and doing all kinds of amazing things. Yeah, the transition is real. It's but what I learned from that is you got to have your day-to-day crew, the crew that inspires you, that you get along with. And for me, it was finding this art community that I could connect with, and like I said, call my crew. And so when I needed something or I needed support, they are there. And I think that is, if you can really concentrate on having a secure crew before you go in, so that when you come out, they're there, and they've kind of gone on that journey with you as you've changed, but they're there to support you when you come out. So crew is everything.
I know we're short on time, so I'll just share 2 really quick anecdotes. After MDRS, I definitely forgot how to use my credit card, and that was just 2 weeks. And then after my Aquanaut mission, you sleep so well at 1.6 atmosphere. So I was still convinced I was underwater the first day in my hotel, and kept trying to put my phone on what I thought was the galley table, but it kept dropping between the pillows. I was so confused. So there was definitely a transition that happens.
Yeah, it's my connection with family and friends. Like, you learn how to communicate and work with various people in the small group for a very short, intense period of time, but it's how to be a better partner to my other half, to be a better son to my parents, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm on the road probably 40 weeks a year and been to over 75 countries type of thing. So I'm very out there all the time. So it helped me be a better communicator within my own personal circle.
Yeah, completely agree with everyone. I'll just add, for me, I get overwhelmed when I come back from these extreme environments where there are very few people or no people or even not many animals, to be honest. And then suddenly I enter a grocery store and there's like variety, woo, and then like the millions of people and everything. And so that tends to be hard. And then, yeah, I would always have this like post-travel depression from wherever I would come back. So having the support network, extremely important. But I also just learned to find what are the things that I enjoy here in my everyday life, to have something to look forward to. So I don't dread coming back and leaving my dream job or whatever I was doing, but I have something to look forward to. It's always something that can help ground you and yeah, that light at the end of the tunnel when things seem a bit dark.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree. I had scheduled it interestingly that as soon as I got back from the Arctic, I went to a Taylor Swift concert with my sister. So, yeah, so I went from being the only woman on an island of 5 people to being in a concert hall of like 20,000. So I think I would have been very overwhelmed at that contrast. But I was lucky to have my sister with me, and I'm incredibly close to her. So I think having family, having a support network who understand what you've just experienced and who can be there to help kind of lessen the novelty of it. But yeah, I agree with what everyone said.
All right, let's give it up for our panelists.